Howdy, everyone. Matt here. I got a question for you. Do you think that experience is actually valued monetarily? Let's talk about it. All right, everyone. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. My name is Matt. I am Matt the PT, coming at you with another video, another topic of something from the physical therapy world. First off, let me apologize for my voice. That time of year, stuff going around. So I'm going to sound a little bit off. But that being said, let's go right into it. I want to talk to you today and ask you the question: do you think, as therapists, that experience is valued monetarily? I've talked about experience and things like that in the past, but some stuff has come up and I want to talk about it and hear your thoughts, opinions, and beliefs, all that down in the comments. I first saw this picture not too long ago. It was a clinic here that's showing that one of their clinicians said that with their services, there'll be an additional fee paid to it based upon their experience. So the patients seeing this therapist have to pay a little bit more. And this kind of sparked something that I wanted to talk about because I think there's just a lot of different areas going on. And it's kind of a big thing. It's kind of a big thing. And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of players involved. But I think maybe if we talk about it, maybe we can start working towards a solution. And I know the first time I ever heard people really talking about experience and like revenue was with the CPT code changes for evaluations. And that's been, oh my gosh, I don't even remember how long ago at this point. But if you were around then, you remember it. If you weren't, well, at that time, it used to be that PT evals were just one charge. It didn't matter what was going on. It was one charge. And then I don't know who exactly decided to change it. So you have the low, moderate, and high complexity. And there was a big talk about the like utilizing them. And people were saying, well, you know, if I have 20 years experience and I may say that a patient is a low complexity, but a newer graduate who hasn't had the experience and things like that may say it's a high complexity. And then that just throws off all the billing and they're going to get paid more because if it's more complex, this here and then and it just started this whole back and forth. But if you really look at those CPT codes for the evals, there's a portion of it that is the clinician's judgment, but there is a good bit of objective data that should be collected that goes into that decision making. But that was a talk that people started having. And that could go over to this other thing of like with certifications, and people have brought that up. They say it doesn't matter what certification that you have because what employer pays more money if you go get some certification? Yeah, you can go take all those courses and do all that studying and get this certification. Well, employers aren't going to pay you more money for doing any of that. No matter if you have your OCS or not, or your GCS or NCS or your fellowship or whatever. They don't pay you more money. So it's not even worth to spend your time, effort, and the money to go through that to get those certifications because you're not going to get paid anymore. And that kind of leads to this other thing people bring up. They're like, it doesn't matter your experience or certification or anything because you get reimbursed from insurance companies the same no matter if you have 15 minutes experience or 15 years of experience. And that's honestly true. Insurance companies don't pay more if you have more experience, certifications, or anything like that. And that really kind of goes over to when and how are we valued monetarily, or that's shown monetarily. And I do think we do need to talk about money and things like that because money is very important. It's hard to pay your rent or your mortgage or your cell phone bill, your electricity bill with hopes and experience. You can't do that. Money pays for it. All the people who've ever played in a band can tell you the stories of some venue going, oh, we can't pay you, but think of the exposure. And it's like, wow, I can pay all my bills with exposure. But, they bring that up. And I do think it's a very valid point, but I do believe we really do need to talk about the monetary aspect of it. And that should be something that therapists are awarded. That if you do gain experience and knowledge and those things, you should be compensated. But I don't believe that it's valued in areas where it should be valued. I mean, right off the bat, talk about like insurance companies. They don't value what you do. They don't. So it doesn't matter. Again, if you have that 15 minutes of experience that you got your license 15 minutes ago and you bill something, it's going to pay the same as a therapist who billed the exact same thing who's been practicing for 20, 30 years. It's going to pay the same. But insurance companies just don't really care about it. Now, I will say, I do think when it comes to experience, that insurance companies kind of probably have like a love-hate relationship with it. Because like, I could see like as you get more experienced, you get better at things. You can recognize things faster. You may be able to get patients better. You know how to kind of milk their systems a little bit. So the insurance companies may like you because it's like, oh, we know that you can get somebody better faster, but we don't like the fact that the little back doors and tricks and stuff like that to kind of go about it. But I really see I don't believe insurance, and I don't really think that'll ever change with insurance companies. They're not going to go, oh my gosh, yes, you have 25 years. We're going to pay more. I mean, heck, even look at like the contracts, and that's something. If you have a cash pay clinic, and people say, well, I know you don't take insurance, but this one does take my insurance, and the insurance company is going to want that patient to go see them because they're a network. And I've told people, insurance companies don't vet who they have. As long as you fill out the paperwork and take their rates, they'll take you. They're not going to put forth the effort to try to see who is good and who is not. I would value your experience if you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Back to the video. Now, I think this bit is a little controversial, but I really want to talk about it. And I think that most employers don't really value a lot of experience and things like that. Like I said earlier, you get a certification or something like that, or you have 20 years experience. You may get raises for that. You've been there for so long, but how often do they really value those things? And I've gained this experience and this knowledge and all this to be able to help people. How often do they really want to compensate fairly for that? Now, I will say, oftentimes your next employer will value that because that's what they are seeing. But I even say some of those cases get very interesting, that you can get really hampered at being a more experienced therapist with certifications. I know I've dealt with that. I'll tell my story on that. Many years ago when I was applying for positions when I moved, I was applying for all sorts of places. Well, one thing on my resume is I ran clinics for 6 years. I was a clinic director, and I was pretty good at being a clinic director. I had a lot of metrics. I understand the metrics of running a clinic, and I was not getting any callbacks. Nobody would call me back. Places would just email me back. Oh, no, you're not what we're looking for. Like, how am I not? I meet every single qualification that you have. And I actually legitimately had one clinic tell me this, and I probably still got the email buried somewhere. They said, well, we see that you have management experience, and we're kind of concerned that you would leave us to go do something else. That really speaks a volume to that clinic, that it's like, okay, well, I don't want to go work there because you're not really offering a very good place to work. If you're going to be scared that an employee is going to leave for another position, your workspace, your employee, like, you're not a good employer because you're not providing an environment that the person wants to stay. And now, like I said, that email is probably buried somewhere in there, but that was a real, very interesting thing. And I run into this thing now, and it's a very, very interesting thing as well. I get hit up with employers and recruiters all the time hitting me up with some offer here and there. And they do that. And it drives me wild with recruiters. And this really shows that they don't care about the value. Is they're like, hey, we got this position here. And he goes, and you list all this stuff off. And the first thing, and I would imagine that you probably do this too, it's like, what's the salary? Because where I am now, it's what are you going to pay me? And honestly, and I don't fault anybody for having that. Because again, you can't pay your bills with mentorship or any of that stuff. I got bills to pay. I got stuff I got to pay for. I need money for it. Okay. If you want me, you're going to have to pay for it. And that always turns into this back and forth. Well, we would really have to look at your resume. And that always turns to the most ridiculous thing, especially when it's on a job site where everything is listed with your experience. Well, we have to look at that. You're looking at it right there, and you can't say that. Okay? You can't say that. And here's a thing that I always throw to them, and it always throws a curveball to them. And you can do this too. It's great. It's a great thing to do because it really puts it back on them. I was like, what kind of therapist are you looking for this role? What kind? What is it that you're really wanting out of them for this role? And you can get, and they may say, oh, we want somebody who does this and this and this and this and this. It's like, okay, cool. Now, are you wanting to actually pay for that? Or do you just want to pay enough for somebody who's just going to warm a seat up and just run through exercises? And I'm going to tell you, they usually shut down at that point, and they don't, because it shows that's what they say, but they want to pay for the other one. I even once posed a question on LinkedIn about with a director position. It's like, what are the roles and responsibilities and everything a director should have? To which his upper level manager of a company put this long list of things. I said, oh, that's great. How much should they be compensated? Deleted it. Deleted the comment. I still have the notification. So I still have the notification that they commented. They don't like that. Employers don't want to pay that. And I don't think that's very fair. So whenever we get into talking about the APTA with compensation and, that stuff has come out, oh, the wages are going down. The APTA is not doing anything. The APTA, and I've said this before, I'll say it now, I'll say it again in the future. APTA does not set your wages. They don't set your wages. How does the APTA set your wages? And if you want the APTA setting your wages, do you want them? Do you want them saying, oh, okay, we're going to come up with a number and that's what everyone should be paid? Nobody would be happy with that. Do you also want them to just go in and spend all this time and effort to figure out every single zip code and area on what everyone should be paid in those? They don't do that. Who sets the wages? The employers set the wages. If the APTA set them, it could be in a really expensive area. And they said, well, it's $50 an hour because that's whatever we figured out. Well, if you're in an expensive area, that could be too low. If you're in a lower income area, that may be too high. And then you're forced to pay that. So I always think it's the most ridiculous thing. But I really think we really need to put this back to the employers to say, if you want therapists that do these things and you want this, you need to compensate for it. And the last thing is to talk about what is the public, those patients, those people who come to see us, what do they value therapy at? Like that first therapist we talked about in that example, adding the $15. What percentage of people did they lose based upon that? We may never know. We may never know the truth, but they could have lost patients from it. They could lose future patients because they see that and go, I'm not paying that, because people value, they look at therapy as therapy. All therapy is the same. I always joke, people think physical therapy is like toilet paper. And, and I said, there's all different kinds of toilet paper. You got John Wayne toilet paper and you got Charmin. And if you're wondering what John Wayne toilet paper is, it's rough, tough, don't take crap off nobody. And you can have that, but people kind of value it all the same in many of these situations. But I will say that there are times where people do value it more. I mean, look at people who have cash pay clinics that they can charge different rates. They could charge a higher rate or something, again, based upon, what it costs to run a business, but people will pay out of pocket for that because they're saying, I see the value in it. I will pay more for this better value. But at the same time, some people don't. Some people can't. And I think we also need to understand that. As much as people like to say, if you valued it, you'll pay for it. If you valued it, you would find a way. Well, I'm going to tell you what, if you ain't got the money, you're going to go with the cheaper option. And that's just the truth. I've been there at points in my life when it's like, I really wanted this, but I don't have the means of, I have to go this. And you've probably been there too. Our patients deal with that as well. And sometimes they want the value and they will pay for the value, but sometimes they don't see it. They may not be able to pay for it. Sometimes they just don't care about the value. But anyway, I do value what we do, and I do think that it is a good thing as we gain experience as we go through our careers, that we become better and better at what we do, being able to help people. And I think no matter what, we should gain that, and that we shouldn't stop striving to be compensated fairly for that in some form or fashion, and showing our value. And there'll be times when people won't value it. I mean, look at anything. I can tell you where I came from. There were people that would do taxes. They weren't even like tax preparers. And you would think that's something with all your personal information. And this would come up every year. People would not spend the money to go to somewhere like an H&R Block to go get their taxes done. They would go to this a nobody. I saw one that was like in a barbecue shop, and they were doing taxes with all their personal information. It was stealing from them, and people would still do that stuff. It's just going to be all over there. We have to do what we got to do. But I do believe we need to push hard, especially with employers, to say value the experience, because you're going to benefit from it. Our patients are going to benefit from it. When you have that experience and that knowledge, it's going to pay off. And you can see this with companies that start firing experienced people, everything tanks. But anyway, I don't want to be too depressing and talk. I just want to talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts, beliefs, and opinions, all that down in the comments. I may have rambled on too much about it, but please share that down in the comments below. If you enjoy the video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you a copay or anything like that. And until next time, take care of yourself. Take care of your patients. I'll see you then.